Hi, I'm Tim and welcome to watchyouwant.com. Thanks for logging on. Today, we're looking at a slightly offbeat Panerai reference that mixes the best of the company's past and present. You're looking at the Panerai Radiomir 8 Days Titanio PAM 346. Now, this model is in the image of the classic Panerai combat dive watch. It has that classic pre-war and wartime cushion case, the 1-to-1 aspect ratio. It has that classic basically sandwich dial, the stencil on top of the fully loomed disc, and that classic name Radiomir. One time it stood for a radioactive loom used on Panerai instruments, including the watches. Today, it denotes the original Panerai case form, once known as the 3646. Today, it's known as the Radiomir, and this 45mm example in grade 5 titanium is an outstanding modern rendition of Panerai's classic combat diver. Now, if you know Panerai, you know the tradition. The mid-1930s, the Italian Navy was beginning to assemble pioneering combat dive teams. That is what would later become known as combat swimmers, underwater demolition teams, later even U.S. Navy SEALs. But the bottom line is the idea of combining amphibious forces and elite cadre training was considered to be revolutionary, and they needed revolutionary instruments, depth gauges to know how deep they were going with their pioneering breathing apparatus. They needed directional equipment, compasses that were bright, that were externally wearable over dive suits, that were legible underwater and in the dark, and they needed watches. And Panerai supplied all three. So this watch, in the image of that original combat diver, preserves the aesthetic that made Panerai a hit on the civilian market as well. As of 1993, the company began marketing its watches to the civilian market for the first time, and as of 1997 it debuted the Radiomir case shape, expanding its line, and this is, for a lot of traditionalists, the original Panerai. Although the Luminor is sometimes considered the rock star of the line, the Radiomir is the purist's model, and this Radiomir PAM 346 takes that purist form in its original shape, in its original aspect ratio, and combines it with grade 5 titanium for a very light wrist presence. Now, anyone who wears Panerai on a regular basis will tell you that of the two, if you want a less imposing, less thing that ate your wrist look, what you want is the Radiomir case. It wears lighter, it has less of a footprint on your wrist if you have a smaller or average size wrist, and adding titanium to the mix only accentuates that. Now you can see it on my wrist, 6 1/3 inches, 16 centimeters. The watch wears very comfortably. It really feels like it's not there. I would say that the weight of this watch on the wrist is considerably less than any Rolex Submariner or Sea Dweller on a bracelet. I would even say it's comparable to something like an Audemars Piguet Royal Oak Offshore forged carbon Bumblebee. It's just that gossamer, comfortable, ergonomically correct, aesthetically discreet look that a lot of people don't associate with Panerai, but this PAM 346 achieves it. I would say that for ultimate comfort, this is as good as it gets in the Panerai catalog. But the watch also has a tremendous amount of style. While it fuses that original combat dive look that persisted in the Panerai lineup through the 30s and 40s, it also adds modern refinements befitting a luxury watch manufacturer. And you'll see that the brushed case contrasts beautifully with the polished bezel, and that contrast is a sign of the attention to detail that defines a luxury product, and it continues on the dial. Not just that stenciled three-dimensional layer over the loomed base. It's also a gorgeous matte tobacco in color, and that really plays beautifully against the rose gold hands. The three hands of this watch, hours, minutes, and seconds, are a beautiful polished rose gold. Now there's a nice tritone here that combines the light green of the Luminova with the tobacco of the dial and the rose gold of the hands. Gorgeous and just perfectly complementary with the alligator strap that itself features a contrasting single stitch thread. Now, alligator is a little bit unconventional on Panerai watches. Traditionally it's going to be rubber or it's going to be natural calf skin of some kind like the original combat divers. So anytime you have alligator, it just presents a little bit different, and it's always a little bit more upscale than calf skin or rubber, and that theme continues throughout the watch. Now you can see this one's basically newer than new, still in the original factory tang buckle shrink wrap with the original boutique tags attached. This watch is unworn and unowned. With watchyouwant.com you will get the entire factory set, but you get so much more because this watch goes beyond accessories and aesthetics. There's tremendous watchmaking credibility here. Now, as of 2005, Panerai started to debut its own movements. Traditionally a consumer of what are called customer calibers or outsourced movements. Panerai opened its own manufacturer in Neuchâtel, the canton of Neuchâtel, in 2005 and started making its own movements to a very high standard. and the 2002 was the first of the new line, and this is the 2002 9. You can drive the hour hand backwards and forwards. It's great for traveling. Independent of the minute hand, it can actually drive the date fore and aft without any consequence to the movement. That's a convenient feature, but you can see that the watch also incorporates, if I can turn it over here, the watch also incorporates a beautifully finished movement. Remove our little protective Watch You Want sticker, sealed for your protection as always. The watch features the caliber 2002 9, and you can see how persistent those stickers are. That's our Panerai grade Watch You Want sticker right there. But the 2002 9 features a full balance bridge with kiff shock protection. It is free sprung, and here's the surprise and delight feature that you get here. A caseback power reserve that actually displays all 8 days of reserve Audemars, but without marring that clean, classically inspired dial. So you get the best of both worlds, the modern watchmaking content and power reserve. So if you want to rotate through a collection of Panerai watches, if you own many watches, if you're the type who likes to swap often, you don't have to come back and rewind the watch manually. It'll be there when you want it. And even if you go a week between wearings, it's just going to be one pleasurable interaction, not a perfunctory and obligatory constant winding. Just one quality moment with your watch once a week. And with the free sprung balance and the full balance bridge, it has the ruggedness that you expect, really, of a combat dive watch. There is no vintage Panerai, Rolex, Audemars, or Angelus movement that is up to the demanding watchmaking standards of this one in terms of being worn the way people expect to wear their watches today. That is to say, like a Rolex, like a tank. This watch has that kind of credibility to endure the day in and day out on the wrist. And with 100 meters of water resistance, you just throw on a rubber strap and it's good to go wherever you are. Plus, with the proprietary Panerai screw-fixed wire lugs, these actually pop right out when you undo the screws at each corner. You can do the strap swaps at home by yourself. So you get that fun Panerai aftermarket and factory alternative strap swapping that makes owning these watches as much a hobby as a pleasure. So the bottom line is that the Panerai PAM 346 Radiomir 8-Day Titanio is an outstanding example of what made the company great historically, but also what makes it so engaging today. Luxury content, refinement, original watchmaking through an in-house movement, and a great one at that. This is a watch that's just a bit more formal, a bit more upscale than your classic Radiomir, and because of it, it's a little bit exceptional within the Panerai line. Check out this Panerai PAM 346 Radiomir 8 Days Titanio on our website, watchyouwant.com. See it with full factory accessories in high-resolution images. If you're interested in a Panerai that wears like forged carbon, that's light as a feather on the wrist, but the classical image of Panerai heritage, this PAM 346 may just be the watch you want.